Hi, my name is Bree, and I will be conducting an interview for the Global History of Quarantine project, and I will be interviewing one of my peers, Isis Thomas Hill. Um, Thank you for agreeing to do this interview as part of my history class at Sacramento City College. As part of this class, we're acting as working historians by doing this interview. Our goal is to create a record of the COVID era because we know this will be seen as a historic moment in the future. I have a few questions for you. Let's begin. Did you experience a transition from in-person to online during COVID? If so, how did this affect your ability to learn?
I definitely did feel a transition, and it was sort of drastic. It wasn't really abrupt because we didn't really know what we were getting into when school stopped, but it was a transition from being around my peers almost all the time, people my age, to being alone with my mother and my close family members, basically. But it was isolation. Isolation definitely describes it. And it was difficult to adjust to. It was very difficult to adjust to. I'd say that learning wise and education, it it put me in front of my work more, I'd say, but it was also sort of detached. Like, there's no teachers to like tell you and look you in the eye and say you have to get this done. So it's like I
More
lost connected.
self-discipline.
Exactly.
My next question for you is, how did going through COVID change your routine on a daily basis?
I'd say my routine has always been concise. I'd say before COVID, the routine has been, wake up, go to school, maybe go to therapy in like later years of school. But, being around friends kind of broke that monotony. Like every day was something different. And like teachers would break that monotony too, with like, learning new things and talking to new people. But the routine for when COVID hit, it was like, almost insanity. Waking up, looking at your computer, making food or getting food, and just you lose
Less
track of time.
socializing.
When you don't have much like mental stimulation going on, if you're doing the same thing, like time goes by like that. Like days started like melting into each other.
Definitely. How do you um How did you make any changes to your goals while going through COVID, your goals with high school, goals with college, goals with your career?
I'd say my goals were always like sort of blurry. I never knew exactly what I wanted to do, and planning things out wasn't really difficult, but it felt like if I do this, will I be happy? If I go on this trajectory, will I be happy? And it was sort of when COVID hit, it felt like no single path is going to make me entirely happy. It's not about choosing the right one out of like a selection of what paths you'll take. It's about what you do with that. So, education wise, my goals became a bit more concise, I'd say. I've always been interested in history, like being in that field was going to be a given for me, given how I was raised. But it's less about career, I'd say. I'm less focused on career, more on what I can do to learn more about the world and what I can do to make sure other people learn more about the world.
Nice. Um, my next question for you is, did your crew, people you spend time with in person or through media, change because of COVID?
Absolutely, absolutely. We were I wouldn't say we were very tight knit, but we were close, like in school. And it was definitely something to look forward to in school, going to see our friend group and talk about things. But like with a lot of high school friend groups, it's making the most of what you have. Like without high school keeping us all there, we would all go on our own trajectories, like regardless. And I think it saddened me at first. It kind of like surprised me because I never really had a large friend group like that before.
Mhm.
But once COVID hit, it felt like, oh, do these people hate me? And also the isolation definitely didn't help that because I was in my own head like, oh, do my friends hate me or like do I just need to go to sleep?
Well, you
So
live kind of far from everyone else.
I do.
So that how do you think that it was affecting like friendships and being able to see people?
Huge impact. Huge impact. I tried to do my best to do like, online Zoom meetings, like meet up as much as possible online, but it's not the same. And like other people know it's not the same.
Definitely.
So I felt like I was distancing from the group. And like, since I never had a large friend group like that, I was like kind of grasping at straws trying to like get that back. But I think it made me seem obsessive. Like it made me realize maybe I need to focus on myself.
Thank you for sharing. And my next question for you is, how do you think going through COVID has shaped you as an individual? For instance, who were you before March 2020 and who are you now? What changed?
The ISIS before COVID tried to make excuses a lot. She was and still is a procrastinator, but the difference is, I think, I would always try to blame others or other forces for my shortcomings. Like, oh, if I didn't turn this in, it's because the deadline was too soon, or this teacher isn't good at teaching, or the subject is too hard, or the school system is awful and I shouldn't be doing this in the first place, and why even succeed? But after COVID, I'd say it took me a while. It wasn't like immediately afterwards, but it took me a while to like face myself, to reflect more on the self. And humans have the power to make habit and break habit. What I needed to do was break habit, and realizing that it's painful because you don't want to change how you do things because that's how you do things. But it's more rewarding when you work on yourself and take accountability.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. And then my last question for you is, if you could relive the past 2 years, what would you do differently?
I would have broken my old habits like as soon as possible. It's painful to do that, but rewarding.
A lot
It's like
of
working out.
change, self-discovery.
Self-discovery. That's
Exactly.
a big part of COVID, at least for me. I would have taken a lot more risks, like getting myself out there, I'd say. Like, I'd say I kept to myself too much. I kept to myself like way too much. And, putting yourself out there is scary. You're going to get negative feedback likely, and that's going to be discouraging, but you
Mhm.
have to work around it.
Takes a lot to do that.
Hmm.
Well, thank you, Isis, for participating in this interview for me and taking time out of your day to do this. I'm going to end this interview just in a moment. Just to reiterate, this project is for my history class and is part of a collaboration with Stanford University and their Life in Quarantine Global Archive. And if you approve, our interview will be housed online. So we would be online content creators. If you do not want this interview shared, it's totally fine. It will only go to my professor, Holly Piscopo from Sacramento City College and Stanford Fellow this year. If you'd like to ask questions, I can give you her contact information. Are you comfortable with this interview being online?
100%.
Awesome. Well then, thank you for participating. And then her email, if you want to contact her, I'll also send it to you as well, is piscop@scc.losreals.edu. Thank you so much. You're the
Thank you for
best.
interviewing me.